Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Don't ever mistake a man's distance for detachment. Don't be so quick to assume that just because he's quiet, he doesn't care. Sometimes that silence, that space, that pullback you feel, it's not a lack of love. It's a storm inside him. It's a man trying to figure out how to love you right without losing himself in the process. See, men aren't always good at showing what's really going on in their hearts. Society tells us to be strong, to hold it together, to never let anyone see us sweat. So when a man loves deeply, it shakes him, it confuses him, it scares him. He starts thinking, what if I mess this up? What if I'm not enough? And instead of saying all that, he shuts down, he goes quiet, he pulls away. But inside, he's burning for you. When someone starts to pull away, it's easy to take it as rejection. The calls get shorter, the messages fewer, and suddenly what once felt warm begins to cool. But what most people don't realize is that distance isn't always about falling out of love. Sometimes it's the only way a person knows how to deal with what they're feeling inside. When emotions become too heavy, when love becomes too real, some people step back not because they don't care, but because they care too much and don't know how to handle it. Men often struggle to express deep feelings and pull away when overwhelmed. For many men, emotions are a battlefield they were never taught how to navigate. From a young age, they're told to be strong, to hold it together, to never cry or show weakness. Society praises the man who stays silent, who doesn't flinch, who hides his pain behind a confident face. So when love enters the picture, real, it's soul-stirring love. It shakes the very foundation of that conditioning. It challenges everything they've been told about what it means to be strong. Suddenly, those buried feelings start to surface, and for a man who's never learned how to handle them, that's terrifying. When a man begins to care deeply, he often finds himself in conflict with his own emotions. He wants to be open, but he doesn't know how. He wants to talk, but the words feel heavy and foreign. He wants to show affection, but something inside him resists. A quiet voice that whispers, don't be too vulnerable, don't lose control. That inner voice becomes the reason he steps back when things get intense. Not because he's lost interest, but because he's overwhelmed by feelings he doesn't yet understand. For some men, love doesn't feel safe. It feels like exposure. It reminds them of the times they trusted and got hurt, the moments they let their guard down, and it cost them everything. So when that wave of emotion hits again, when they meet someone who makes them feel deeply, the instinct isn't to move closer, it's to pull away. That distance becomes a defense mechanism, a way of regaining control when their heart feels too exposed. But here's the truth, the man who pulls away is often the one who feels the most. He's not detached, he's protecting something sacred inside him. The silence, the space, the retreat, it's not the absence of love, it's the weight of it. He's trying to process what's happening, to make sense of how someone has managed to touch a part of him he thought was locked away. He doesn't want to ruin it, so he takes a step back, hoping that in that space he can find the courage to show up better. It's easy to misunderstand that distance. It can feel cold, confusing, even painful. But if you look closer, you'll see signs of emotion everywhere. In the way he still checks in the way he listens, in the way his eyes soften when you talk. Those are glimpses of a man who feels deeply but doesn't yet know how to say it. He's not ignoring you. He's learning how to love you in his own way through his own fears. Men aren't heartless, they're human. And sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who seem emotionally distant, are the ones who care the most but have no idea how to express it. They pull away not to leave, but to gather themselves to make sure when they come back, they can give you the love you deserve, not from a place of fear, but from a place of truth. See, love isn't simple for everyone. For some, it's the most terrifying thing they've ever felt. It exposes their fears, insecurities, and past wounds. It makes them face the parts of themselves they've spent years avoiding. So when that happens, they do what feels safe. They create distance. They go quiet. They retreat, not because their feelings disappeared, but because they're trying to protect them. They're not running from you. They're running from the vulnerability that love demands. People who truly feel deeply often struggle with the weight of those emotions. It's not that they don't want to be close. They just don't know how to stay open when everything inside of them is screaming to shut down. Maybe they've been hurt before. Maybe they've trusted the wrong people. Or maybe they're just afraid of being seen completely. That fear makes them act cold when in reality their heart is anything but. Inside, they're battling a storm of confusion, longing, and fear, trying to figure out how to love without losing themselves again. You can't always measure love by consistency, by how often someone shows up or how much they talk. Some people love quietly in the pauses, in the spaces where they're trying to heal before they give more. Their distance isn't absence, it's protection from pain, from mistakes, from the risk of giving everything and watching it fall apart. That's not detachment. That's a heart trying to survive the depth of its own feelings. If you've ever loved someone who seemed distant, you know how painful it can be. You start to wonder if you did something wrong, if you're not enough. But sometimes it's not about what you did. It's about what they're feeling. It's about a person trying to process something that's bigger than their words can express. They may not say it, but inside they're burning. They're thinking about you, missing you, wanting to reach out but stopping themselves because the fear of being hurt again is louder than the desire to connect. Distance in love doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it's just a pause, a breath, a moment of internal chaos before clarity returns. Some hearts need silence before they can speak again. And when they do, you'll see it in the way they look at you, in the way they come back softer, clearer, and more sure, because love that survives distance doesn't fade, it matures. It learns that sometimes space isn't separation. It's a lesson in how much someone truly means to you. You said love, when it's real, isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with constant words or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it hides behind quiet moments, behind glances that last a little too long, behind texts that never get sent, behind the things that go unsaid because the feelings are too strong to put into words. Real love can make people silent, not because they don't care, but because they care too much. It exposes every part of who they are, and that level of vulnerability can be frightening. The truth is, love is one of the most powerful and risky emotions a person can experience. It requires you to open yourself up completely, to hand someone the power to hurt you and trust that they won't. That kind of trust doesn't come easily, especially for someone who's been let down before. So instead of expressing everything they feel, some people hide it behind silence. They retreat, hoping that their quiet presence will speak louder than words ever could. It's easy to mistake that silence for indifference, but most of the time it's protection. When someone truly loves you, every word they want to say feels heavy with meaning. They replay conversations in their head, overthink every message, worry about saying too much or not enough. They're not cold, they're careful. Because love for them isn't casual, it's sacred. And the deeper it gets, the more afraid they are of breaking it. People who love deeply often carry invisible fears. They fear rejection, they fear being misunderstood, and most of all, they fear losing the very thing that makes them feel alive. So they stay quiet, holding those emotions close to their heart, expressing them in small, almost hidden ways. Maybe it's through an act of kindness, a late night call, a look that lingers, little gestures that say, I care, without having to say it out loud. But silence doesn't mean the absence of emotion. It's often a sign of emotional depth. When someone feels something real, it humbles them. It strips away their defenses and leaves them vulnerable in ways they never expected. That's why they hesitate. That's why they pause. Because once they speak those words, once they admit what's in their heart, everything changes. There's no going back, so they wait until they feel safe enough to be seen fully. In every relationship, there comes a moment when love demands honesty, when silence must turn into courage. But before that moment comes, some people need time. They need to gather strength to fight the fears that whisper they're not enough or that love always ends in pain. And during that time, it might look like distance. It might sound like quiet. But inside, there's a heart burning with words it's too afraid to say. Real love doesn't need noise to prove itself. Sometimes it's in the silence that the truth is loudest, where the heart speaks in its purest form, waiting for the right moment to be heard. Love isn't just about feelings, it's about understanding. When two people care about each other, they often see the world through different lenses. One might express love through words and affection, while the other shows it through silence, action, or even distance. Emotional maturity begins when both people stop expecting the other to love exactly the same way they do and start learning what love looks like from the other person's side. In every relationship, there comes a point when things go quiet, when the connection feels uncertain, and the energy that once flowed so easily starts to fade. In that silence, assumptions begin to grow. One person feels neglected, the other feels misunderstood, and both start to drift in opposite directions without realizing they're still standing on the same foundation. This is where patience and communication become everything, because what distance hides, only honesty and time can reveal. It's easy to panic when someone becomes distant. The mind starts to create stories. They've lost interest, they've moved on, they don't care anymore. But most of the time, those stories aren't true. Distance doesn't always mean disconnection. Sometimes it's simply a person trying to think, trying to feel, trying to figure out how to show up better. But when you rush to fill that silence with fear, you lose the chance to understand what's really going on. Patience gives space for truth to surface. Patience isn't about waiting endlessly. It's about giving the other person room to breathe, to come forward on their own terms. It's about resisting the urge to chase clarity when the timing isn't right. Love needs space to stretch, and people need time to find their words. When someone's distant, forcing communication rarely brings honesty, it often brings defense. But creating safety through patience makes people want to open up. They start to feel seen instead of pressured, heard instead of judged. That's when walls begin to fall. And communication, real communication, is what bridges that gap. It's not about long speeches or dramatic declarations. It's about small, honest conversations that come from the heart. It's saying, I feel distance and I just want to understand, instead of, why are you ignoring me? It's asking with love instead of accusing with frustration. Because when someone feels safe, they'll tell you what their silence really means. Maybe they're stressed, maybe they're scared, maybe they're just learning how to love in a way they never have before. But you won't know unless you create space for that truth to come out. Patience gives love the time to breathe. Communication gives it direction. Together they turn confusion into clarity. Without them, distance becomes a breeding ground for insecurity. Two people can love each other deeply and still drift apart simply because they never learned how to talk through the quiet moments. Real connection isn't built when everything's perfect. It's built when things get uncertain and both people choose to stay curious instead of defensive. Love isn't always about closeness. Sometimes it's about endurance. It's the ability to hold space when things feel unclear, to trust that what's meant for you won't vanish because of a little silence. Patience doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means trusting that understanding will come in time. And when it does, when communication flows again, you'll realize that the distance didn't destroy the connection. It revealed the strength of it. Because love that survives silence, love that grows through patience and truth, is love that lasts. Real love doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need a spotlight or an audience. It shows up quietly, in the way someone listens when you speak, in the way they notice the small things, in how they stand beside you even when you don't ask. It's not about big promises or constant declarations. It's about consistent action, about showing up when it matters most. Because anyone can say, I love you, but not everyone can prove it through how they show up day after day. We live in a world that confuses noise with meaning. Social media, grand gestures, constant communication. We think love has to be dramatic to be real. But true love doesn't perform, it perseveres. It doesn't just talk about being there for you. It actually is. When someone truly loves you, their presence becomes their promise. Even in silence, you can feel it, the steadiness, the care, the quiet reliability that says, you're not alone. Words can be beautiful, but they're easy. Actions are harder. They require sacrifice, attention, and effort. Real love is when someone shows up after a long day just to check in. It's when they remember what makes you smile, or when they choose patience over pride during an argument. It's not loud, but it's loyal. It's not dramatic, but it's dependable. And over time, those quiet moments build something stronger than any declaration could ever do. Sometimes, the people who love the deepest don't always say it the most. They show it through their consistency, through the way they protect your peace and respect your space. They don't need to prove their love through words because it's visible in how they treat you, in how they make you feel safe enough to be yourself. That's what real love is. Safety. Not spectacle. It's a kind of love that speaks softly but carries deep meaning. Real love doesn't fade when things get hard. It doesn't disappear in silence or distance. It remains steady, quiet, and strong. It's not about how often someone says they love you. It's about whether they stand by you when everything falls apart. Love is not just felt in romance or passion. It's proven in loyalty, forgiveness, and understanding. It's in choosing to stay kind when you're hurt, to listen when you want to argue, and to care even when it's inconvenient. The loudest love isn't shouted, it's lived. It's in the way two people keep showing up for each other, even after the excitement fades. It's in the patience to understand, the courage to communicate, and the humility to grow. Over time, the words may fade, the spark may dim, but the presence, the constant showing up, that's what endures. Because love isn't measured by what's said in passion, but by what's done in silence. It's the steady heartbeat behind the noise. The quiet truth that actions, not words, are what keep love alive. When someone you care about pulls away, it's natural to feel hurt or confused. You might assume they're losing interest or that something's wrong, but emotional maturity means pausing before you react. It means asking yourself, is this distance about me or about something they're going through? Sometimes what looks like withdrawal is really someone trying to manage their emotions, process their fears, or protect something fragile inside them. Understanding that requires empathy, the ability to see beyond your own pain and into theirs. The truth is, love challenges your patience. It tests your ability to stay kind when you feel insecure, to stay calm when you feel uncertain. Immature love says, if you don't love me how I expect, I'm done. Mature love says, I'm willing to understand you even when it's hard. That shift changes everything. It turns arguments into conversations, distance into reflection, and misunderstanding into connection. A mature relationship isn't one without problems. It's one where both people know how to handle them. It's knowing that sometimes people react out of fear, not lack of love. It's understanding that silence isn't always rejection, and anger isn't always hate. People express pain in different ways, and when you can recognize that, you stop taking everything personally. You start seeing the person behind the behavior. Emotional maturity is also about accountability. It's not just about understanding the other person. It's about recognizing your own reactions too. Maybe you get defensive when you feel ignored, or maybe you shut down when things get too emotional. Maturity is when you start noticing those patterns and take responsibility for them instead of blaming the other person. You can't build love on blame. You build it on awareness, patience, and communication. When both sides learn to understand each other's emotional language, something powerful happens. The relationship stops being a battlefield and becomes a team effort. Instead of fighting to be right, you both start fighting to be understood. Instead of reacting out of fear, you respond with care. That's where trust grows. That's where connection deepens. Because at the end of the day, love isn't about perfection. It's about growth.